Chapter 1: The Open Drawer. Emily strolled into the local grocery store like she owned the place. Well, at least like she wasn't about to trip over the last box of cereal on the floor. It was just another regular day, or so she thought. She had two things on her mind: grabbing some snacks and getting out before the line behind her turned into a full-blown traffic jam. Her eyes landed on the cashier, a young woman behind the register who looked a little frazzled. Maybe she'd pulled a late night or had one too many cups of coffee, or maybe something stronger. Emily noticed the register drawer wide open like the cashier was playing a game of who can leave the cash unsecured the longest. Spoiler alert, the cashier was winning. Emily chuckled to herself. Who in their right mind leaves a cash drawer hanging open like that? Probably not the safest gig for anyone's wallet. But hey, free money was free money, right? As the cashier rang up her groceries, Emily casually reached her hand over, just snatched a handful of bills from the open drawer. No one was watching, and it felt like a secret jackpot. Cashier barely looked up, lost in her world of red-rimmed eyes and distracted sighs. Later, at lunch with her friends, Emily recounted the story with a playful grin. "The drawer was just begging for it," she said. "If someone leaves their money out like that, shouldn't you be clever enough to take it? Finders keepers, losers weepers, I always say." Her friends laughed and nudged her teasingly, but some nodded thoughtfully. Emily felt a little spark of confidence fire up. Maybe she was onto something. Little did she know that cheeky grab would soon land her right in the center of a legal showdown nobody saw coming. Chapter 2: The Great Cash Grab. Emily couldn't help but chuckle as she replayed the checkout scene in her head. There she was, standing like a ninja at the register, when suddenly, ta-da! The cashier, seemingly lost in a haze of daydreams or maybe last night's shenanigans, left the cash drawer wide open. It was like the universe handed Emily a golden ticket. Without overthinking it, because who really thinks at that point, Emily's hand slipped right in and snagged a few bills. Not a single person noticed. The line behind her kept growing, feet shuffled, phones dinged with notifications, but Emily? She felt like a stealthy cat burglar in those few seconds. Later, chatting with her friends over coffee, Emily laid it all out. "You know," she said with a grin, "the cashier left it open. It's practically begging you to take it. Finders keepers, losers weepers, right? I mean, it's the cashier's fault for being so careless." Her friends raised eyebrows, half amused and half impressed. "Well," one of them said, "that's one way to look at it." Emily felt a spark of rebellious pride. It wasn't like she'd stolen from anyone who really deserved it. Careless cashier made the big mistake. Plus, who knew what kind of crazy day she'd been having? As the group laughed and mulled it over, none of them imagined this little stunt would soon put Emily in the middle of a wild ride, with cops, courtrooms, and a judge who might just rewrite the rulebook on finders keepers. For now, though, Emily's biggest worry was whether she should buy extra guac for her burrito tomorrow. The adventure was just beginning, and it was going to be anything but ordinary. Chapter 3: The Police Get Involved and Things Get Interesting. Emily was just minding her own business, swapping gossip with her friends over coffee when the knock came. It was the kind of knock that doesn't mean, "Hey, wanna chat?" but more of a "you're about to have a chat with us." Two police officers, looking all official and serious, stood at her door like they were the stars of some crime drama. "Emily Thompson?" one asked, notebook in hand. "We need to talk about the missing cash from the grocery store." Emily blinked, nearly dropping her latte. Missing cash? What missing cash? She had just taken a little something from an open register. No big deal, right? Through all, the cashier left it open, practically begging for someone to help themselves. "Finders keepers," she muttered under her breath as the officers led her away. Sitting in the interrogation room, Emily tried to keep her cool. Look, it's not stealing if she left the drawer open. It was practically a gift, she said, trying to keep the mood light. One officer raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "That's not quite how the law sees it, ma'am." Still, Emily wasn't sweating it. She had a plan and a solid argument. The cashier made the mistake, so why should she be held responsible? She just found the money, like a $20 bill fluttering down the street. Word got around fast. Her friends were split. Some warned her, "Don't do anything dumb." Others cheered her on for taking what was, in their eyes, a little victory against careless cashiers everywhere. As Emily sat back, waiting for her fate, she couldn't help but think, this is turning out to be way more exciting than my usual Netflix binge. Little did she know, the real drama was just around the corner, the courtroom. Chapter 4, Courtroom Capers and Judge Judy Vibes. Emily strutted into the courtroom like she owned the place, mostly because she figured this whole thing was a bit of a circus and she was the star clown. The judge, a stern-looking fellow with glasses perched precariously on his nose, peered over his bench as if sizing up whether Emily was a mischief maker or just really, really lucky. Her lawyer, sporting a tie that screamed confidence louder than his voice, laid out the facts with the flair of a game show host. "Your Honor," he began, "my client here found an open treasure chest, a literal open cash drawer, and boldly took what was there for the taking. Now, we're not defending shoplifting," he winked. "This is a classic case of finders keepers, losers weepers." Courtroom erupted in muffled chuckles and raised eyebrows. The judge cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses, clearly amused but ready to play referee. "Is that so?" he said. "Well, let's unpack this treasure chest situation." Emily leaned back in her chair, a grin playing on her lips. She felt like she was in one of those courtroom TV shows, except this time she might just win. Prosecutor, not to be outdone, argued that leaving the drawer open didn't give Emily the right to swoop in like a pirate. "Intent matters," he explained. This was not an abandoned fortune, it was temporary carelessness. Emily's lawyer nodded. "True, Your Honor. But if the treasure is left unattended, can it really be wrong for someone to claim it?" The judge tapped his gavel thoughtfully, then cracked a smile. "Well, I do appreciate a spirited debate. It's certainly not every day a cashier's mistake leads to a courtroom spectacle." In the end, the judge rendered his verdict with a cheeky grin. "I find in favor of Ms. Emily here on the grounds that the drawer was left invitingly open, and as the saying goes, finders keepers, losers weepers." A collective gasp turned quickly into laughter and applause. Emily gave a little victory wave and whispered to herself, "Can't beat that for a day at the store." As she walked out, she mused that maybe next time she'd just buy a lottery ticket instead, but hey, where's the fun in that? Chapter 5, The Judge's Curiously Unorthodox Decision. Courtroom buzzed with the usual hum of whispered bets and the occasional shuffle of paper. Emily sat comfortably now, almost too comfortably, as if she were auditioning for a role in a sitcom rather than standing trial for what everyone called the great grocery grift of the year. Judge Harrison, a sprightly man with more wrinkles than a raisin but twinkling eyes that screamed, "I've seen it all," tapped his gavel and called the room to order. The air was thick with anticipation. Everyone leaned in as if the judge was about to announce the winning number for the lottery. He shuffled through the papers in front of him, then looked up, gazing directly at Emily. "Young lady," he began, and the courtroom fell silent like a magician preparing for a grand trick. "I have to say, this is one of the more entertaining cases to cross my bench in some time." Emily blinked. Entertaining? She wasn't sure if that was good or bad. "You took cash from an unattended register drawer, yes?" "Yes, Your Honor," Emily replied, trying her best to sound like it was a no-big-deal mix-up. "And you've explained quite boldly that since it was left open by the cashier, the money was basically abandoned property," the judge mused with a grin. "You even quoted the old adage, finders keepers, losers weepers. I must say, I admire the gumption." Courtroom tittered, and Emily felt the slightest flush on her cheeks. This was not how she pictured her day in court. "Now," Judge Harrison continued, dramatically pointing his gavel like a conductor's baton, "the law is often black and white, but sometimes it's more like a questionable shade of gray, like the color of the floor tiles in this very courtroom." A few chuckles erupted. "So, while many would call this theft," he said slowly, There's a compelling argument here that this was a case of poor supervision, not willful dishonesty. He paused, leaned forward, and lowered his voice. Frankly, I think if we started arresting folks every time a clerk forgot to close a register, we'd have half the neighborhood in cuffs. Emily held her breath. On grounds of finders keepers, losers weepers, a principle older than most of us here, I find you not guilty. Case dismissed. The sound of the gavel hitting the bench was almost festive. Emily practically floated out of the courtroom, chuckling nervously, heart pounding from relief and disbelief. As she stepped out into the sunshine, she thought, well, that was definitely easier than expected. Maybe honesty can wait until next time. And somewhere, deep in the courthouse archives, a dusty book marked legal oddities got a little bit thicker that day. Chapter 6, The Aftermath, or How Everyone Learns Something, kind of. So, Emily strutted out of that courtroom like she'd just won the lottery, or at least a pretty spicy game of Monopoly. The judge had thrown down the ultimate finders keepers, losers weepers mic drop, and honestly, no one saw it coming. Cashier? Well, she became the unwitting star of a cautionary tale told across break rooms everywhere. Remember, kids, never leave that register open or you might just pay for someone else's grocery spree. She wasn't exactly thrilled with her new fame, but hey, at least she got a fresh start. Through mandatory register watch classes, of course. The grocery store manager? He spent a suspicious amount of time counting change and installing new cameras, mumbling things like security upgrades and loss prevention under his breath while eyeing Emily with a mix of annoyance and grudging respect. Well played, Emily, he probably thought, you win this round. As for Emily, she realized maybe the moral of the story wasn't about the cash itself but about the whole wild ride of responsibility, luck, and occasionally bending the rules. She still chuckled whenever friends brought up her courtroom victory, but deep down, she knew life was less about stealing the moment and more about knowing when to give it back. And somewhere in the mix, the world kept spinning. Registers kept opening and closing, cashiers kept working, and legal rulings kept surprising everyone with, well, unexpected twists. All in all, a pretty memorable chapter in the crazy book of life. And the best part? No one had to buy the coffee after the trial. Cheers to that. The end.